Hello again. So, yet another session, last session of today, about pdfToolbox 12. And this is all about visualizer improvements, or the title is visualizer improvements. I think it's the better title actually is Preflight using rendering. So for a long time now in pdfToolbox we have a rendering engine, and we're not just using it for displaying PDF files in the standalone version. We're also using it to analyze what is on a PDF page and derive information that is useful for Preflight, for actually finding out whether there are any issues in a PDF file and presenting that to the user. And we've worked on that. So we've improved that greatly, I believe, in pdfToolbox 12. And this session is dedicated to these improvements. So most of the features are directly related to the visualizer, and that made for the title of the presentation. But there are also better properties, check properties. So we've improved properties. I also want to briefly mention how the whole thing can be used on CLI and SDK. So we have OEM customers, for instance, that are using the output of the visualizer in their own applications and making the images that are created by the visualizer available to their users. So therefore, how you would use at the beginning interactive visualizer features in pdfToolbox Desktop, what these tools can do for you is important also for integration and for OEM customers. Then a few more additions to the improvements to the GUI, and then another feature that somehow is strongly related to the visualizer is the compare feature. So comparing pixel-based, performing a pixel-based comparison on two PDF files, and there also are improvements. So let's dive deeper and just quickly recap for the ones who haven't used it frequently. The visualizer, what actually is that? It is just a couple of tools in pdfToolbox Desktop, as you can see on the right hand here. Just a couple of tools that you can open, and we will do so later on. And these tools provide better and more information for pre-flight decisions, and you can use it in desktop as well as in CLI or SDK. So now really to features. There are a few visualizer modes: the ink coverage, the separation view, image resolution test, and very small objects, where there aren't many changes. And then there are three changes that I want to introduce you to. That is a brand new visualizer for out of gamut problems, a safety zone, improvements for the safety zone visualizer, and ink coverage per separation preview, which actually is part of ink coverage. But let's start with a visualize out of gamut thing. And that is how it looks, but because I mean, what can you do with a visualizer? You rather, instead of speaking about it, you rather show it. So that is what I want to do. And I just open a PDF file in my brand new pdfToolbox 12 here. And then I enter visualizer, and I use this brand new thing, visualize out of gamut. And once I have done so, it shows me in a heat map overview in yellow here problem areas. And here on the right hand side, there is an indication what this yellow or even the orange here in the mouth of the sun means. These are delta E values. So for this feature, we have implemented delta E algorithms that allow the engine to compare two versions of a PDF file, not just on a pixel basis, still on a pixel basis, but not just the difference between the color values, but the delta E based difference. And if I click here, the delta E method, there are actually 4 different methods, and I will introduce you into that just in a couple of seconds. For now, just look at this, and then there is a delta E-based comparison. And what takes place here, I have my file that has an output intent, which is PSO coded here, and I'm now displaying it in a target color space, which is ISO web coded, so on a web printing machine. So in order to be printed on that machine, some color conversion needs to take place. And then if that conversion takes place, there are certain areas here on the page that can't be displayed or printed and web coded. And if you would attempt to do so, then there would be a difference between your original color and the result color that is above the threshold here, and the threshold here is set to 3 delta E. So we've got a couple of problems, not very severe, but there are problems. And then this shows why the visualizer makes so much sense, because in a Preflight check, you could only check whether there are such differences, and then maybe also find out the total amount of pixels that have the difference. But here you can immediately see how big regions are, how many regions are, how they are distributed on the page. So additional information that is useful in order to make informed decisions. And interestingly, so for the color conversion here that had to take place from PSO coded to web coded, I also have parameters that I can play with. And I have by purpose set up a color conversion here that didn't use black point compensation. However, and I found that interesting, if I switch that on, black point compensation being a parameter of a color conversion, then apparently the result is much better. But anyway, so this is the new out of gamut visualizer. And as I have promised, just a few more words on the background. We have learned a little bit about delta E, which is kind of an old concept. So measuring differences between color. And then the first thing, I think, or no, it was a second, is came out a delta E formula that came out in 1976. And that was just in a 3-dimensional space, measuring the distance between 2 points. And then the unit that you would use is delta E. But then people found out that this is not always accurate. So mostly for saturated colors, you need better algorithms in order to make different delta E values of this, the same value in between different colors really have the same meaning. And then some smart people came out with a complicated formula, which I'm not going to explain because I don't understand it. So in fact, what I want to say here, there is a better algorithm, and the community agrees that this is better, and that is called delta E 2000, because apparently it was published in 2000, and that much better meets user expectations. So for now, and for my life, and probably for yours, many of yours at least, it's sufficient to say delta E 2000 is better. And then there is another variant which is called delta C, and C here stands for color, I believe, and that all the difference measurements take place in the LAB color space, and where L stands for lightness, luminosity, so the between dark and white, black and white if you want, and A and B are the colors, and C just ignores the lightness, so it just measures the color distance and ignores the lightness or the luminosity. So in certain cases that might be the better one, but and then again you have delta C 1976 and delta C 2000. But in general, delta E 2000 in the majority of cases will be just what you want to use. And then here some explanation on the values. So delta E, smart people say if it's below or it's the same, similar to 1, then the human eye, the human brain can't recognize any differences. Between 1 and 2, you can see differences with close observation. And with between 2 and 10, it's getting, from a printing point of view, it's getting problematic. And what I usually hear in the industry, that above delta E3 at least is something you should look at. So far on delta E, again, just if there are any questions, let us know. Delta E is one of the topics that we will get back to in the course of these events, because it's not just here in the visualizer. There are other areas where you can now use it. The next one, visualize safety zone. It has been in pdfToolbox for quite some time now. And it just has been improved, and it's an easy one. So I think we will be able to just briefly go over that. So I have a safety distance inside of my PDF, of my trim box, and I have a safety distance outside of my trim box. Both are set to a millimeter unit here. And then on this page, there aren't any problems so far. Nothing's going here. I hope you can see that, or I can zoom in. Here is a green line, indicates the trim box. Nothing seems to be close to it. But if I would say safety zone inside, I'm setting to 3, then I see that at least the T of the toaster here is getting somehow close to the trim box. And again, I mean, usually you would want to recognize bleed problems in an automated way just by using check. But in some cases, as here, and maybe you have cutting equipment that needs a certain tolerances here, then it's useful to also use visualizer things. And then the same you can do from the outside. And you could as well say, if there is a bleed box, then instead of using the value that you enter here, just use the bleed box. And with 5 millimeters, we indeed have objects that reach into the outer area here. But if I click on use the bleed box instead, then we have the usual 3 millimeters bleed zone here. There aren't any problems. Yeah, moving on. The last new thing in the visualizer has a somewhat complicated title. Visualize ink coverage per separation, and then give me or indicate problems when there is minimum or maximum ink per separation. And that is useful for certain printing methods like flexoprint or so, where you just need certain color values and everything below is just cut off. And then in order to make sure what you see on the screen can be printed, that is an indication that the visualizer can get you. And again, we want to see that. And as I've said before, this one is somewhat hidden under the existing ink coverage, which makes sense. But for the ones who are familiar already with ink coverage, you have to remember that here now is a new mode, which is ink coverage per separation, a new view. So, and if I do that, I enter this new area, and again, although the threshold here is 1% below or 99% above, I'm seeing lots of problems in my heat map. The heat map is set up so that and then I can select colors here, and the heat map works so that when I'm displaying more than 2 colors, then I just have a regular heat map where a darker color indicates a bigger problem. But if I switch off colors here to just using 2 colors, then the colors indicate the separations that are having the problem. And here I have problems in light magenta as well as in dark magenta, in light cyan as well as in dark cyan. So with 2 colors I can see even mixtures, so colors are mixed with each other, so I can immediately see what color which colors are having problems. If you're using more than 2 separations, it's not possible to do a nice mixture here. Yeah, and then you could as well say, okay, I'm only interested in low ink coverage, or you can say I'm only interested in high ink coverage problems. Yeah. So here is just the same. What you should make sure is this is sticky, so that means the next time you open the dialog will remember your last settings. So if you now leave the dialog, you will from then on, in this way, next time you won't see any problems. So don't forget, in order to see something, you have to switch on the at least one separation. Yeah, and then I have switched off high here, so I do that again, and then we see the same image that we have seen in the beginning. Yeah. Okay, and then I'm leaving the visualizer for now. I'm now entering the area of checks and properties, because that just belongs to here. The very same feature kind of that we've just seen below and above a certain threshold now works in the ink amount properties. So there were properties all the time, or for a long time now, effective ink coverage and effective ink coverage for separated plates, but they didn't work they didn't work at all actually for less than. So they gave you problems if there is an ink amount above a threshold, but since they always took into account the highest ink amount value of a page, they didn't properly work for less than. So, and then we frequently now get questions from customers who want to check whether there is at least a little bit of color, and if there is at least a little bit of color, that it's not too small amount of color. We've improved that behavior, so these properties, these 2 properties now work better with less than. So far about the visualizer in desktop and the properties. Now, as I've said, just very briefly, just one slide for CLI and SDK, just a tip if you want. The visualizer, as you have seen, I mean, it has all these different modes, and each mode has several parameters. And then if you create a usage information for command line, you end up with really huge command information that, from my point of view, is not really useful. Much better overview and more structure is provided in the online documentation. So if you want to use these visualizer images in an automated or integrated way, then start with a desktop maybe, and then we go to the online documentation to find out how a particular call should look like. And that also brings me to a different topic, what we haven't mentioned so far. We not just released PDF or created or released build of pdfToolbox 12, we also created at least the English part of the documentation. So under help.callassoftware.com, you will also see the new manuals, the new chapters for the manual explaining the new features. Okay, then there are a few more improvements in the GUI. So let's go here, close the visualizer, and for this topic I need a different PDF file. However, it might be the same. It's looking very much the same as before. However, there's a difference. And this difference can be seen over here in the dimensions. Let's go here. So in the dimensions area here that shows me the size of the page, I can now click on this and then it gives me some further information. So it displays all the boxes on the page. And it not just gives the size of the box itself, it also has effective here. And effective stands for these values are calculating user units. So a PDF file can have user units, and this page has a user unit. In pdfToolbox that is called 4, which means all the values on the page are 4 times smaller than they will appear. And in pdfToolbox 12, we have kind of built user units into the system in various places. And this is one of the places. And here you have an immediate indication of whether there are user units or this page scaling factor, and how that makes from nominal values to real user unit values, effective values. And then you can also say which page boxes you want to see. So I can, for instance, switch the trim box on and off in my display. Also remember, when you're missing something here, there is an actually more convenient way to indicate which page boxes you want to see. However, of course, when you open the next PDF page, then it will use the same settings for that. Okay, moving on. There is a small improvement in the Layer Explorer too. So pdfToolbox for a long time has the ability to display layers and allow you to switch them on and off. However, if you have a very complex PDF file with lots of information on layers, pdfToolbox 11 had the habit of always render the page with the new layer settings, and only then looks into the Layer Explorer whether you have changed something. And then you had to wait somehow until the page was rendered again before you could do something else. Now we have what development told me is delayed rendering, so it waits just a fraction of seconds. Whether you make something different, an additional switch in the Layer Explorer before I start rendering the page. And that's why I have given this subtitle acceleration by delay. So it makes the UI more smoothly and works better and more intuitively by delaying something a little bit. It appears to be faster actually. But we don't want to look into that because we have some bandwidth between the two of us, so probably you won't see whether there really had something changed. So now let's compare, and let's compare pdfToolbox 12 with pdfToolbox 11. So now it's about comparing documents. A number of improvements for the comparison that you could do in pdfToolbox 11 are present in Toolbox 12. First, you can now specify the resolution. That was possible in CLI and SDK, but in desktop so far it was always the resolution of the screen that you are using. And then I think the most problematic situation was when you wanted to create or just check certain settings in order to use them on command line or in the SDK. Now it's easier because you can tell the engine what resolution to use. very nice thing, I think, is at the bottom here, you have a new indicator, go to next page with differences, and that exactly does what it tells you, and I will show you that in a second. So not more here. And then somewhat hidden, we have here also the delta E capabilities. So under channels, it is possible, instead of doing an RGB or CMYK or whatever comparison, you could also do a comparison based on delta E values. So let's have a quick demo here. I need my toolbox, and I need 2 other files. Yeah. Then I open the 2 of them here, and I can say Command-Shift-C for compare. And then it shows me that in these 2 PDF files, there aren't any differences when I use minimum sensitivity on the first pages. And up until now, I would now have to use my page movers here to go to the next page. But now I can use this nice thing here. I can say, just show me the next page with differences. And then it has to render, the engine has to render each page. And then only when it finds differences between the 2 pages, it stops and tells me, yeah, I found something on page 17. And then I can, as always, say here, start quick change. And I hope that you can see that via our Zoom session here. It compares, or it shows the 2 pages intermittently, so that I can easily see that, yeah, the engine is right. So some guy has changed these 2 slides here. So far for compare documents. And then finally, I want to show you a powerful feature in a process plan. We will rarely have duplicates, but this is also something that we will have in another session this week, compared PDFs. There is a new process plan step, compare PDFs, and that allows you to compare PDFs. And in a process plan, that will happen mostly with previous versions of a PDF file. And I just also want to show that. So we close this and we go back to our first file here. And I've created a process plan just for this presentation. It says compare after prepare for tablet process plan. So what does that do? Of course, it starts. And then it just calls another process plan. So it would be easy to adjust. And that prepares a PDF file for tablet publishing. As I've mentioned before, preparation of print PDF files for tablet publishing is getting more and more a frequent requirement for us. And this does many things. So it does many things with the page. And then, of course, you want to find out whether there are in the result page. So basically, it creates one big image out of much of the content on the page. And then you want to find out whether there are any major differences. So you would put the result and compare it with the original, so the one that went into the process plan and compare step. Then if there are differences, you create a copy out of the result, but only if there are differences. And then you pick up the original file again, and then it ends. So if there are differences, the process plan will provide you with the original as well as the modified result. So, and then let's just try that on this file here. And then for the first time, I need my profile window. I say analyze and fix, and then I want to save the results. Yes, and I've done that before. So, and now it runs into the other process plan that prepares this page for tablet publishing and has done now. And it came up with a result, and that tells me that it found differences on one page. So, and since this process plan was well prepared, I have got a modified file just here, modified 001, because I did that before. And then if I drag this onto my screen here, onto my pdfToolbox window, I have two PDF files that look the same, but that are, I go now, so if they seem to be the same somehow, but somehow the engine has found differences. So this time we use the compare documents in the menu. And then when I look at it, I see that there indeed are differences here indicated. However, this is a printer mark. So actually inside of my page, there aren't any problematic areas. So apparently these parts here, the printer marks, are creating problems. So, and then to just double check that, we could on the result file just run the very same process plan again, and then we say, okay, this is no, and then it does the same thing, so it puts it again into the other process plan, does something with this thing, and then it comes back and tells me, okay, there aren't any problems. So I don't have an indication here of differences. So that worked better because we started with the result. So obviously it would have been much smarter if I'm going to tablet to set the crop box to the trim box before, but for this presentation, this made sense. And that's it. I guess since my colleagues here were quiet, there weren't any important questions, at least.
There is one
okay.
that might make sense to explain a bit. You showed the minimum ink on separation.
Yeah.
The question was, I think you showed it with CMYK. The question was whether that would also work for spot color.
Yeah. I forgot to mention that. I haven't got a PDF file easily here with spot colors, but I think you will believe me that if there would be spot colors in my file here, no, I'm lost. So we need ink coverage, and then we need ink coverage per separation. And then I would have additional entries over here. Then I would have spot 1 or whatever Panettone or other library I would use, which names we don't know, then the names of the spot colors would show up here. Anything else? So I assume, if I would now say, okay, I assume you all want to go home. That is at least for some of you not true, because you already are at home in your home office. But anyway, yeah, I'm glad that you was here with us. So we really tried our best to make it as convenient and nice for you to get into this brand new pdfToolbox 12. That's it for today.